I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling.
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you were in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology. Our Democratic Party, unfortunately, is not the party that is of, by, and for the people. It is a party that has been and continues to be influenced by the foreign policy establishment in Washington, represented by Hillary Clinton and others' foreign policy, by the military-industrial complex and other greedy corporate interests.
Senator Harris, any response?
Oh, sure. I think that it's unfortunate that we have someone on the stage who is attempting to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States, who during the Obama administration spent 4 years full-time on Fox News criticizing President Obama.
That's
who
ridiculous,
has spent full-time,
who
has spent full-time criticizing people on this stage as affiliated with the Democratic Party. When Donald Trump was elected, not even sworn in, buddied up to Steve Bannon to get a meeting with Donald Trump in the Trump Tower, fails to call a war criminal by what he is as a war criminal, and then spends full time during the course of this campaign, again, criticizing the Democratic Party. What we need on the stage in November is someone who has the ability to win. And by that, we need someone on that stage who has the ability to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump, and someone who has the ability to rebuild the Obama coalition and bring the party and the nation together. I believe I am that candidate.
Thank you, Senator. Congresswoman Gabbard, I'll give you a chance to respond.
What Senator Harris is doing is unfortunately continuing to traffic in lies and smears and innuendos because she cannot challenge the substance of the argument that I'm making, the leadership and the change that I'm seeking to bring in our foreign policy, which only makes me guess that she will, as president, continue the status quo, continue the Bush-Clinton-Trump foreign policy of regime change wars, which is deeply destructive.
It was never their purpose to prove Russian collusion. And in fact, from the very beginning, they knew that no such thing actually existed. They knew that the entire Russian collusion narrative was fabricated by the Clinton campaign to deflect attention from her mishandling of classified materials and destruction of official emails. But they didn't need to prove Russian collusion. They just had to keep the investigation alive. And so long as they had a complicit press, and so long as they had people in this very body who has been here, one of the gentlemen who has been here much of the day, who would go on TV every night and lie about the smoking gun, they could further their personal and political agendas.
Вот на MP4 снимает, короче. Ну хуй с ним, давай на MP4. Давай, снимай, короче. Ладно, блядь. Смерть надо, это не то, это тоже не надо жечь. Смерть Америке! Смерть! И вас так жечь будем, уроды ебаные. Так что пизда тебе, Джордж Буш! Скоро мы до вас дойдем. Давай, топчи его. Давай.
За ВДВ!
За ВДВ! Раса ебаная, сука. Джордж, козел! Это, так не ставьте, короче.
I know that there are protests still happening in major cities across the United States. I'm just not seeing the reporting on it that I had
that's right.
for the first few weeks.
That's right. But they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And they're not, this is a movement, I'm telling you. They're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not. And we should not.
I know that there are protests.
And as a woman, there's a balance to be struck between being tough and being a bitch. Turn that off.
The U.S. is experiencing record inflation, the worst in 30 years, way beyond expectations. OPEC didn't increase oil production. Can you tell us a little bit about how you would prevent the new spending in your Build Back Better agenda from exacerbating the problem? And also, what else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
All right, thank you. Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry. So it is something that we take very seriously. But there is also a point that is important to make on the Build Back Better framework. One, it is designed to make it less expensive for working people to live. It was specifically designed to bring down the costs of childcare and increase accessibility and availability. Designed to bring down the cost of elder care. And make it available to all those working families that need that support and need that help. And Build Back Better is not going to cost anything. We're paying for it.
I mean, when were you out there protesting?
Well, I was in a stroller. And so I was out there. And in fact, my mother used to have a very funny story. And she said, Kamala, what do you want? And I said, freedom.
No. Oh, come on.
In January 1965, Martin Luther King gave an interview to Playboy magazine. The quote is as follows. I never will forget, this is MLK, I never will forget a moment in Birmingham when a white policeman accosted a little Negro girl, 7 or 8 years old, who was walking in a demonstration with her mother. What do you want? The policeman asked her gruffly, and the little girl looked him straight in the eye and answered, freedom. She couldn't even pronounce it, but she knew it was beautiful. I mean, it's almost word for word. I'm calling bullshit on it.
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit. I made a very conscious decision to become a prosecutor. There's not a black man I know, be he a relative or a friend, who has not been the subject of some form of racial profiling or excessive force. So when I made a decision to become a prosecutor, it was a conscious decision, which was to go inside the system and have some leverage there to effectuate change. I am very clear that some of the success that we've been able to achieve around criminal justice reform would not have happened in recent years were it not for Black Lives Matter. The brilliance and the impact of Black Lives Matter and their brilliance in conceiving it, history is going to show was an inflection point. I actually believe, as a former prosecutor, that Black Lives Matter has been the most significant agent for change within the criminal justice system, because it has been a counterforce to the force within the system that is so grounded in status quo and in its own traditions.
Do you support defunding and removing police from American communities? And if not, why do you think there's such a hard time being differentiated right now between defunding and reforming?
We have confused the idea that to achieve safety, you put more cops on the street, instead of understanding to achieve safe and healthy communities, you put more resources into the public education system of those communities, into affordable housing, into home ownership, into access to capital for small businesses, access to health care regardless of how much money people have. That's how you achieve safe and healthy communities. Cash bail is not only a criminal justice issue, it's an economic justice issue, meaning people are sitting in jail because they don't have the money to get out. Meanwhile, the person who has been charged with the same offense and has money is out exercising free will and liberty, right? Out there able to walk the streets. So that's an economic justice issue. So we'll get rid of cash bail.
A Minnesota bail fund supported by Vice President Kamala Harris during her 2020 campaign helped set an accused domestic abuser free. Now, just weeks after his release, he's back behind bars after prosecutors charged him with murder.
We'll finally pass red flag laws, universal background checks, and an assault weapons ban.
Assault weapons that are already in circulation. What do you do about those?
We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program.
Which is essentially a gun confiscation.
And if they fail to do it, then I will take executive action.
I cannot stress enough the importance of getting vaccinated for those who have not been vaccinated. Vaccines are safe, they are free, and they will save your life. This Delta variant, it spreads faster, and it is in many cases reported to be much more serious in terms of its impact. And the vaccine will protect you from it.
President Harris has COVID.
It's time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. We are doing it. What Joe and I intend to do is make two-year college free for all students. For students who are coming from a family that makes less than $125,000, four-year college if it's a public school or a minority-serving institution will be tuition free.
Our administration has forgiven student loan debt for nearly 5 million Americans, and twice as much for our public servants, including our teachers. We have reached a commitment that all licensed home appraisers be required to complete racial bias training.
You support the Medicare for All bill, I think initially co-sponsored by Senator Bernie Sanders. You're also a co-sponsor on it. I believe it will totally eliminate private insurance. So for people out there who like their insurance, they don't get to keep it.
Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on. Our agenda will extend the child tax credit. It will expand paid family leave.
Domestic terrorism, including white nationalist extremism, from Pittsburgh to Charleston to Orlando, is a threat to the country we love and should be considered a national security priority.
Where do you stand on some form of reparations for black people?
We have a history of racism in America.
So you are for some type of
Yes, I am.
reparation? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Do you have plans to visit the border?
Not today. But I have before, and I'm sure I will again.
You had a message for would-be migrants. Don't come.
Do not come. Do not come.
The notion that the border is closed. Why should they believe you when they know that people are getting in?
But they need opportunity. They need assistance. They need support.
But Americans don't
and we
see
have the ability to give them that.
Yeah, Americans don't see a lot of that on a daily basis. What they do see at their own border, children being lowered over fences, children coming in with, phone numbers stenciled on their hand.
Yeah.
And so the question has come up, and you heard it here, and you'll hear it again, I'm sure. It's why not visit the border? Why not see what Americans are seeing in this crisis?
Well, we are going to the border. We have to deal with what's happening at the border. There's no question about that.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
This whole thing about the border. We've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
And I'm being clear with you right now.
Yes, okay.
And so if you're interested, I'll continue to be clear. You start on one side of the barrier, and you end up on the other side. There's breaking involved. And when you break things, you get cut. And you may bleed. And it is worth it every time. Every time. To see the moment in time in which we exist and are present. And to be able to contextualize it. To understand where we exist in the history and in the moment as it relates not only to the past but the future. We got to take this stuff seriously as you are, because you have been forced to have to take it seriously. People have to understand that when we're talking about voter ID laws, be clear about who you have in mind and what would be required of them to prove who they are. You're going to have to Xerox or photocopy your ID to send it in to prove you are who you are. Well, there are a whole lot of people, especially people who live in rural communities, who don't. There's no Kinko's, there's no Office Max near them. Over these last 18 months, Democrats have delivered. Let me rephrase that. Over these last 18 months, Democrats have delivered big time. Your capacity to do whatever you dream and aspire to do based on other people's limited ability to see who can do what. This is part of what's involved, is that we have to know that sometimes people will open the door for you and leave it open, sometimes they won't. And then you need to kick that door down. Excuse my language. The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do, and there is such great significance to the passage of time. And in Joe Biden we have a president who is probably one of the boldest and strongest American presidents we have had.
We interviewed the president and asked him about his recorded statement. Quote, "I just found all the classified stuff downstairs," end quote. He told us that he didn't remember saying that to his ghostwriter. He also said he didn't remember finding any classified material in his home after his vice presidency. And he didn't remember anything about how classified documents about Afghanistan made their way into his garage. My assessment in the report about the relevance of the president's memory was necessary and accurate and fair. Most importantly, what I wrote is what I believe the evidence shows and what I expect jurors would perceive and believe. I did not sanitize my explanation, nor did I disparage the president unfairly. I explained to the Attorney General my decision and the reasons for it. That's what I was required to do.
The way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated. I spend a lot of time with Joe Biden, be it in the Oval Office or the Situation Room. And I can tell you, this is someone who is tireless in terms of working on behalf of the American people. He is an extraordinary leader, and I wish that people could see what I see, because there's only one person who sits behind that resolute desk. Joe Biden is going to be fine, and let me tell you something. I work with Joe Biden every day. The work that under Joe Biden's leadership our administration has accomplished is transformative. I spent a whole lot of time with our president, be it in the Oval Office or the Situation Room and in other places. I will tell you that he is in front of, often, everyone in the room in terms of thinking about how we can resolve issues. I'm not lying. I'm telling you a fact.
But if there ever is a problem, do you think that you could go tell the American public? Do you think in your role that you're in a position to do that?
Of course, if necessary, but there's no need for that. There is a political argument that is being made that is not based on substance. And you're asking me to hypothesize around what are my duties to the American people as Vice President of the United States that are based on ethics and morals and the law. I will always follow those rules. But I am suggesting to you that it is important we not be seduced into one of the only arguments that that side of the aisle has right now.
When folks vote, they order what they want, and in this case, they got what they asked for.
Our breaking news right now, we are looking at what's taking place down in the Dow Jones is down about 1,010 points. It's about 2.5%. We've been watching this all morning. The plummet is fueling fears of recession.
Inflation's up more than 21%, right. And real wages are down about 2%.
That's real life stuff.
Joblessness has increased more than 0.5% since January, and it's something that it just doesn't usually happen in a healthy economy. A rise like that is historically a sign that a recession is imminent.
We have never been down 1,000 points ever, not even intraday on the NASDAQ.
Is that true?
That is true.
Okay. Down 6% right from the get-go. This is heavy big tech. Here we go. Look at them go down. Microsoft is down $20. That's 5%. Alphabet, 5%. Meta, 6%. Amazon, 6%. Apple, 9% down.
Ironically, they brag about things like the Inflation Reduction Act. That's stoking inflation. They brag about all the money that they're giving the world's richest corporations to build factories here. Well, guess what? We gave $8.5 billion to Intel. You know what we got in return? They're going to get rid of 15,000 workers. Is that smart? Is that really brilliant? Is that what we should be doing with taxpayer money? Stoking inflation and losing jobs? It's nuts. What you're seeing right now in the stock market is what Americans have been feeling for the last 3 years. It's just a manifestation of it right now.
All that, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else, that is called Bidenomics. That is called Bidenomics, and we are very proud of Bidenomics.
Look, part of this movement, and it's not just a moment, it's a movement, standing on the shoulders of the movements before. Part of this has to be about changing the system, rehauling the system, upending the system. And so that piece of it, you're right. Under this Attorney General, I have no hope for it being implemented. But God willing, he will be out of that office shortly. And then we need to have a requirement that that office do the right thing going forward.
So then if you're for overhauling, where do you stand on defund the police?
Look, right. So here's the thing. Defund the police. The issue behind it is that we need to reimagine how we are creating safety. And when you have many cities that have 1/3 of their entire city budget focused on policing, we know that is not the smart way and the best way or the right way to achieve safety. If for too long, the status quo thinking has been you get more safety by putting more cops on the street. Well, that's wrong. Because, by the way, if you want to look at upper middle class suburban neighborhoods, they don't have that patrol car. They don't have those police walking those streets. But what they do have, they have well-funded schools. What they do have is home ownership, high home ownership rates. What they do have are thriving small businesses. What they do have is access to public health and mental health services. So this whole movement is about rightly saying, we need to take a look at these budgets and figure out whether it reflects the right priorities.
The gentlelady from Wyoming is recognized.
Mr. Durham, in reviewing your report, I sincerely wanted to understand the work that you did and decipher the various investigations that we have been discussing. The origins, the history, the backstory, the who's, the why's, the what's, the what ifs, and the how. I desperately wanted to figure out what happened to what was once our flagship law enforcement agencies, the FBI and the DOJ, to determine what went wrong and to evaluate how we can go forward from here. I have listened with great interest, hoping to find some answers to the burning questions of the day. And I have reached a few conclusions that I do not believe are subject to dispute or debate. Now, I truly appreciate your regard for the agency you have dedicated your career to. I am sure that as your investigation progressed, you must have been truly saddened by what you found. What you have exposed, however, is that we are dealing with something so corrupt and so rotten that no amount of face paint, deflection, or whitewashing can fix this. You have been asked lots of questions about predicates, protocols, the Steele dossier, the Australian connection, Mr. Papadopoulos, Mr. Carter, the FISA court, and Crossfire Hurricane, among others. Your responses have been enlightening, but let's get to the brass tacks. None of those people or documents or reports were relevant to the FBI when it identified Donald Trump as public enemy number one. What do I mean? The accuracy and veracity of the Steele dossier was irrelevant to the FBI. The accuracy and veracity of the reports coming from the Australian embassy were irrelevant to the FBI. The fact that the Russian experts in the CIA, FBI, NSA, and other agencies had no evidence of any kind of relationship between Mr. Trump and Putin or Russia was irrelevant to the FBI. And the fact that there was no verifiable evidence, such as testimony, documents, videos, or recordings of Russian collusion, was irrelevant to the FBI. Nothing, and I repeat, nothing that the FBI did was designed to show that Donald J. Trump was a Russian asset. That wasn't the purpose of the entire charade. How do I know this is true? Because they told us so. The very people who cooked this up and the ones who ran this entire operation. Strzok, Lisa Page, Andrew McCabe, Kleinsmith, Steele, the DNC, Perkins Coie. It was never their purpose to prove Russian collusion, and in fact, from the very beginning, they knew that no such thing actually existed. They knew that the entire Russian collusion narrative was fabricated by the Clinton campaign to deflect attention from her mishandling of classified materials and destruction of official emails. But they didn't need to prove Russian collusion. They just had to keep the investigation alive. And so long as they had a complicit press, and so long as they had people in this very body who has been here, one of the gentlemen who has been here much of the day, who would go on TV every night and lie about the smoking gun, they could further their personal and political agendas. Oh no, the purpose of Crossfire Hurricane wasn't to prove Russian collusion, it was to destroy Donald J. Trump. And they told us that with the text messages that are set forth on page 49 and 51 of your report, 49 and 50 of your report. And then, if they failed at blocking Mr. Trump from being elected as president, well, they had a backup plan. They had their insurance policy, to use Strzok's terminology, which was to make it impossible for him to govern, to use whatever tools were available to taint his presidency, the legitimacy of his election, his ability to work with foreign leaders, and to make everything about Russia, Russia, Russia. And how has this corruption and rot manifested itself in our everyday lives, in our national culture, in our ability to solve the problems we are facing? It has destroyed some of the key foundations of this country. A foundation built on equal protection, on the belief that justice is blind, on the belief that you will be held accountable if you commit a fraud of the magnitude of what we have been discussing here today, on the belief that due process, justice, and constitutional rights are more than mere words. It has left a smoldering, hot, volcanic mess where the soul of this country used to be. All because a few people in the FBI decided they wanted to destroy a political candidate and ultimately a president and anyone associated with him. While these folks set out to destroy a presidential candidate and later a presidency, the fact is that they destroyed so much more, and that will be their ultimate legacy. One casualty is America's faith in our institution, and another casualty is the erosion of a justice system that is supposed to apply equally to all Americans, but that has been weaponized to protect the favored few elites, the Clintons, the Bidens, while targeting political enemies. That is the current legacy of the FBI and DOJ. Mr. Durham, here's my question. How long do you think that this country will survive?
Mr. Chairman, the time has expired. You can't ask a question.
A two-tier justice system that seeks to persecute people based on their political beliefs?
Witness may respond. Gentlelady's time has expired.
I don't. Do I respond?
Sure.
I don't think that things can go too much further with the view that law enforcement, particularly the FBI, or the Department of Justice, runs a two-tiered system of justice. The nation can't stand under those circumstances.
Well said. Gentlelady yields back. This concludes today's hearing. Mr. Durham, we thank you.
Could I put, with unanimous consent, could I put two documents into the record?
Take that back. The hearing is not over. The gentlelady may make her unanimous consent request.
Don't miss the most damning Durham finding and 6 documented instances of systematic pro-Democrat FBI corruption.
Without objection. Again, Mr. Durham, thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for a long time being here. 6 hours is almost 6 hours is.
Alexander Hamilton, delegate from New York, said, "We are now forming a Republican government. Real liberty is not found in democracy. If we incline too much to democracy, we shall soon shoot into a monarchy." John Adams, one of the giants of the American Revolutionary period, said, "Democracy will envy all, contend with all, endeavor to pull down all. And when by chance it happens to get the upper hand for a short time, democracy will be revengeful, bloody, and cruel." America was founded not as a democracy, but as a constitutional republic. We pledge allegiance to the republic for which our flag stands, not to a democracy. The Constitution requires a republican form of government for all states, but does not mention democracy, and neither does the Declaration of Independence or the Bill of Rights. A woman asked him what kind of government the convention had given America, and Franklin replied, "A republic, if you can keep it." Very old and very wise, Franklin saw through the mists of time to the day when Americans might trade their freedom in a constitutional republic for the promise of government guaranteed equality and security in a democracy. And beyond that, to the day when democracy inevitably degenerates into dictatorship, guaranteeing nothing but poverty and serfdom for the people it robs and rules.
Now, I want to just talk about the contrasts a little bit, because let's really discuss the details, the difference between Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump. We know, of course, Donald Trump had a lot of great successes in the Oval Office, and we know Kamala Harris has not had a whole lot of successes, but let's talk about why. Let's talk about the policy details. Now, here, President Trump's view is very simple. We're going to end this terrible affordability crisis, and we're going to increase take-home pay with 3 simple things. Number 1, we're going to stop 25 million illegal aliens coming into this country competing for wages against American workers. We're going to stop ridiculous job-killing regulations like the EV mandate. Let's buy American-made stuff, not Chinese-made stuff. And number 3, we are going to drill, baby, drill. We got plenty of energy right here in Pennsylvania. Let's get it out of the ground with Pennsylvania workers. Now, here's the other thing that Kamala Harris wants to do. Kamala Harris thinks that instead of deporting illegal immigrants, we should be giving them amnesties. Does that sound like a good idea? Kamala Harris thinks that instead of unleashing Pennsylvania energy workers, we ought to buy energy from Iran and every tin-pot dictator all over the world. Is that a good idea? And Kamala Harris thinks that instead of unleashing American energy and American creativity and American business, we ought to tax you guys more to send your money to communist China to buy electric vehicles. Is that a good idea? So is it a good idea to give Kamala Harris a promotion? No, we're going to do what Donald Trump loves to do to people who don't do their jobs. You are fired, Kamala Harris. You're out of there. It's done. Now, the president actually just called me. I was sitting back there backstage, and the president called me, and he said, you know, the crazy thing is, JD, that Kamala Harris, she's pretending that she agrees with us on everything. And if you look at her campaign the past week and a half, she pretends that she agrees with Donald J. Trump on every issue. She is running a copycat campaign. And I said, Mr. President, I think I figured out what's going on. She wants my job. She's realizing that they don't have any chance. She's going to ditch Tim Walz, and she wants to run alongside Donald Trump. She's pretending she agrees with you on everything. But we can't let her pretend, ladies and gentlemen. We have to remind people of the real record. Kamala Harris wants to defund the police. Kamala Harris wants to ban fracking. Kamala Harris wants to further entrench the EV mandate that sends your tax dollars to China instead of buying American-made cars from American workers. Kamala Harris has said all these things on videotape, and as much as she wants to pretend she agrees with Donald Trump, I have a suggestion, Kamala Harris. If you would like to enact the policies of Donald Trump, you could do it right now because you are the vice president. So do it right now. Don't pretend you're going to do it in 6 months. Now, I've been in politics for all of 2 years, and I've met some pretty shameless politicians. But I've never met anybody who, as the sitting vice president, could stand before a crowd and say, on day one, we're going to tackle the affordability crisis affecting American families. It's like, Kamala, day one was 1,300 days ago. You've been the vice president for 3.5 years. If you want to get to work, start now. Don't make promises. Start doing it now. And here's the final big difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. You know, I've been asked by the media, I've been attacked by the Harris campaign because I believe in a very simple principle, that our tax policy ought to reward American workers and American businesses, and I know Donald Trump agrees. So here is the contrast here. Donald Trump wants to cut your taxes. Donald Trump wants to cut taxes on American businesses hiring American workers, and he wants to raise tariffs on the Chinese and everybody who's trying to rely on Chinese slave labor instead of American hardworking people. And Kamala Harris wants to raise your taxes and cut down on the tariffs that are making it harder for people to cheat and use Chinese labor instead of American workers. It's ridiculous. Why don't we make it easier to hire American and harder to rely on Chinese slave labor? That's the Donald Trump approach, and I know every single person here agrees with it. So let me leave you with one final thought here, and then I want to kick it over to our illustrious media to ask some questions. It's very simple, my friends. Look, we have the best country in the entire world. I've been flying... I've been flying all over the country, doing events like this all over the country with my beautiful wife. Isn't she lovely? Sorry to embarrass you, Usha, but you bring your wife to Erie, Pennsylvania, you got to embarrass her a little bit, right? And all I can think about when we fly into a new place or we drive to a new place is what a beautiful country this is. I'm a Buckeye, and yesterday I was in Big Rapids, Michigan, and it was hard to admit it, but Big Rapids, Michigan is a beautiful place. Erie, Pennsylvania is a beautiful place. We have got the best natural resources and the most beautiful countryside of any country on the face of the earth. And we've got something better than that. We've got the best history. We've got the best traditions. We have got the best workers right here in Pennsylvania. The only thing, thank you. The only thing that is broken about this country is its leadership. There is nothing that we cannot do as a people, nothing that we cannot do as a people. So let's send a message right here in Erie, Pennsylvania, all over the state of Pennsylvania, and all over the country. We are sick of the broken leadership of Kamala Harris. We're going to get a president who is equal to the challenge of this country and deserves to be the leader of its people. That's Donald J. Trump. And together, we're going to put him back in the White House. God bless you all. Thank you. And thank you for having me out. Here's the thing that I think it's important for those, all of you get this, but I think a lot for especially our friends in the press and those watching at home. Look, if you don't have American trucking, nothing works. How do you think the groceries get to the grocery stores? From American truckers. How do you think that the things that you buy at Target or any other store, how do they get there? They get there with American truckers. We do not have an economy unless American truckers are able to do what they do so well. And we have a president right now and a vice president, Kamala Harris, who wants to raise the price of diesel, raise the price of gasoline, and have every trucker in this country drive an electric vehicle, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we have a lot in the state of Ohio. We have a lot of great trucking companies, just like you do here in the state of Pennsylvania. And I was meeting with some local truckers when I was in D.C. at my Senate office. This is probably 6 or so months ago. And what struck me is not just that they were frustrated by Kamala Harris's policies. What struck me is how little Kamala Harris knew about the business of trucking in this country. In fact, I guess one of them asked a senior administration official, they said, well, you guys want us to all drive electric trucks. That doesn't make any sense. And they said, no, no, no. We're going to get electric trucks to the point where they're the same price as a normal diesel truck. And so I guess these truckers asked Kamala Harris's officials, well, how much does an electric truck cost right now? And they said about $150,000. And all of you are laughing, but the reason you're laughing, to the friends of the media, is the reason they're laughing is an electric truck right now costs $400,000. If you force all these great truckers to buy electric trucks instead of the trucks they're currently using, you're going to make this inflation crisis way worse than it currently is. You think groceries are bad? Wait until Kamala Harris makes every American trucker drive an electric truck. You think car prices are bad? Wait until Kamala Harris makes everybody buy a Chinese-made electric vehicle. And you think housing prices are bad? Wait until Kamala Harris makes it impossible for our truckers to get construction materials to the house building site. Kamala Harris's policies are a disaster, ladies and gentlemen, not just for truckers, but for everybody who relies on them, which is everybody.
I'm going to see Vice President Harris here tomorrow. Just wondering if you're concerned having Harris at the top of the ticket, if that could hurt Republicans at all, and if we need to have Donald Trump, or if you believe Donald Trump should come out here and campaign as well.
I think that Kamala Harris is actually less popular. If you can imagine this, Joe Biden is so unpopular in Arizona. I'm out talking to more people than all of you guys combined. I talk to more people every single week in Arizona, I think, than anybody. And because I'm a populist candidate who has a great relationship with the people. People don't like Joe Biden. That's pretty obvious. They like Kamala Harris even less. They understand that she hasn't done anything for the border. I don't really believe all the public polls. I've seen a lot of polls. I tend to like the ones that are the internal ones. That's the one where there's no BS involved. And so, you know, you guys can try to create, like I said, it's like a makeover show, total makeover. You're trying to say that somebody who has done nothing for the border, called herself the border czar, has done absolutely nothing, is a San Francisco liberal who destroyed San Francisco. And you're trying to now all of a sudden act like she's the biggest superstar on the planet. And you can say that all you want. And there's a reason that your viewership and your subscriptions are just in the tank right now, because no one's believing the fairy tales that you're telling. And so say all you want and try to.
Joe Biden is not going to be the nominee. I would make any bets about that. The party that gets rid of their 80-year-old candidate is the party that's going to win.
Who do you think will be the Democratic nominee?
Well, I've said there's going to be a female president of the United States. It will either be me or it will be Kamala Harris. And if Donald Trump is the nominee, mark my words, we will see a President Kamala Harris.
Donald Trump has my strong endorsement, period. You don't have to agree with Trump 100% of the time to vote for him.
Well, there was a change. Joining us tonight to talk about the presidential campaign, the situation in the Middle East, former presidential candidate, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. Governor, thanks for being here.
No, it's great to be with you.
You know, when you talk to somebody about that evolution, obviously you're running for president in one and you're endorsing the former president at the RNC in another. How do you explain that, and where do you see it right now?
Well, if I thought Donald Trump and Joe Biden were the best candidates, I wouldn't have run. I ran because I thought I could do a better job. I ran because I really cared about the next generation, what was going to happen, and all of the issues that I talked about on the campaign trail. But we are where we are. I am a voter, too. I have to make a choice. And when I look at the issues and I look at the differences between the two candidates we've been given, there's no question that I want to see Donald Trump win this election, because we can't have a Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I mean, all you have to do is look at what Kamala Harris has said. She doesn't think illegal immigrants are illegal. She thinks that we should give them free education, free place to live, free health care. Tim Walz thinks socialism is neighborly, and he's gone a step further and thinks we should give them free tuition. They want to raise taxes. You look at everything that's happened with our economy already. We can't afford that. More than anything, from a national security perspective, you can't go to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who have not had the foreign policy experience, and the experience they do have is that they want to expand the Iran deal and give more money to a terrorist organization that says death to America. There's a lot of differences there. We are where we are. And right now, for me, for my family, for those that I love, and as a voter, I think we need to hope that Donald Trump wins this election.
Yeah, a couple of recent polls have shown this bump, that this enthusiasm that this new ticket has received. Reuters has registered voters at 49-47. With Harris leading, and among young voters, a big shift going that way. NPR, PBS, Marist has it 51-48, and with suburban women, Harris leading significantly. Will you go out and campaign for the former president?
Well, I think the first thing you need to ask is, you know, I said that early on, I said a vote for Joe Biden is a vote for Kamala Harris. I was always running against Kamala Harris. Republicans should not be surprised that we are now running against Kamala Harris. It was her all the time. There was no way Joe Biden, in the condition that we saw him, could take on the stresses of a presidential election. So, you know, that was something I believed in then. It's why I constantly referred back to her, because I knew that Kamala Harris was the person that we had. And look, what I'll say is it's not an issue of whether I go out and campaign for Donald Trump. He's decided the way he wants to do this. What I will tell you is the Republican Party needs to make a serious shift here. And the first thing is the Republican Party, Donald Trump, people here at Fox, quit complaining that she's not giving an interview. You don't need an interview from Kamala Harris. I take her at her word. I take her at her word that she wants to raise taxes for households over $100,000, that she wants to add a pharmaceutical tax and a health care tax. I take her at her word that she thinks that illegal immigrants should be able to vote and be given driver's licenses. I take her at her word that she wants to ban fracking and kill a bunch of U.S. jobs. Take her at her word.
Despite the fact that the campaign has pushed back and put out statements and saying that her positions have changed.
She has said this. Now, what Donald Trump needs to do is go out there and campaign every single day, telling the American people exactly what Kamala Harris has said. We are 80-plus days out. We need him to win. But you got to go out and do the work. And the one thing Republicans have to stop doing, quit whining about her. We knew it was going to be her. She's not going to give an interview. They're going to hold out as long as they can. That's their right. They can do it. That doesn't mean we can't talk about what she believes in, and we should be getting out there and doing that. And more than anything, this is not an election for just the MAGA vote. Trust me, Donald Trump has that. Republicans need to be fighting for suburban women, for college-educated, for independents, for moderate Republicans, and conservative Democrats. They want to be asked for that. The Republican Party needs to go out for them. Talk to them. Talk to them about the fact that Americans, the average American homeowner is now 49 years old.
And do you think
Talk to
that's not
them.
happening now? Do you think that this campaign is floundering on that point?
I want this campaign to win. But the campaign is not going to win talking about crowd sizes. It's not going to win talking about what race Kamala Harris is. It's not going to win talking about whether she's dumb. It's not. You can't win on those things. The American people are smart. Treat them like they're smart.
Do you think the campaign is missing the mark on those things?
I think the campaign needs to focus. That's the main thing. Look, this is a winnable election, but you need to focus. Who is your target market? Your target market is suburban women, college-educated independents, and conservative Democrats. That's your target market. The target issues are the economy, the fact that Kamala wants to raise taxes, the fact that she's taken money from those that didn't go to college and has given it to those that did, the fact that when Afghanistan fell, the fact that when they lifted sanctions on Iran, the fact that when they, actually said that they would help Israel and then pulled back. Where was Kamala when that happened? She was sitting right next to Joe Biden in the Situation Room. This administration is Kamala Harris's administration. Everything that has happened is hers. So define her on that way. Talk about those issues. Talk about how dangerous it is to expand the Iran deal and get back in it. Talk about how dangerous it would be to do an arms embargo on Israel. Talk about how dangerous it was that Afghanistan fell. And talk about how dangerous it is that you have a presidential candidate and a vice presidential candidate that have never dealt with foreign policy, and their way of dealing with it is we shouldn't treat Russia and China as adversaries. That's what they said.
You were very prescient, as you talked about facing Kamala Harris, and that she eventually would be the nominee. Do you think that it was designed that way? Do you think that the early debate and the whole, they knew, do you think they knew that this was not going to be their nominee?
I don't know, and I don't think it matters. We're in a knife fight right now. Right now, we need to be focused on who we need to be.
But here's what
not
matters.
So much how we got to this point. I always knew it was going to be Kamala. I was prepared for Kamala. The Republican Party, I think, should have been prepared for Kamala, and I think they are.
But here's why it matters.
The key is talk about it.
New York Times op-ed, there is still a Biden scandal. The people who readily signed up for another 4 years of a 10-4 presidency are still running the government around him. Certainly, it's better for Kamala Harris not to be asked questions, assuming that she ever deigns to be interviewed about whether she participated in that cover-up or was taken in by it. Indeed, it's better for Harris not to have her boss in the political conversation at all. The better to separate her own identity from his presidency's unpopularity. But to the point of this, President Biden is still the president. And there are real questions about, on at least the Republican side, about his capacity to be president. Do you have those same questions about him as president right now?
From the very beginning. It's the reason why I said we should have mental competency tests. That wasn't just a campaign slogan or a joke. I was very serious about the fact that we needed mental competency tests for anyone over the age of 75. I think we could do them for anybody over 50. But we have these issues. When you've got the leader of the most important country in the world, and you saw the press conferences, and you saw the shuffling, and you saw his inability to keep on a conversation, we knew that she was going to step in. It wasn't if, it was when. Now we're at the when. So now we're 80-plus days to make sure that there is not a President Kamala Harris. And the way to do that is let's focus, let's get to work, and they need to be out there talking about the issues that 20% care about.
If former President Trump follows your advice and really hits those different demographics and wins this election, and he asks you to serve in his administration, will you?
Well, I genuinely hope he does that, and I genuinely hope he wins. But no, I'm not interested in serving in the administration. I said that on the campaign. This was never about a position for me. This was never about something else. I ran because I love this country so much. My husband's a combat veteran. I'm the daughter of legal immigrants. I have kids that I worry about as they grow up. It was really in that vein that I ran. But now it's in that vein as a voter that I want to see Donald Trump win, because we can't afford to have a President Kamala Harris. It's so much more progressive than Joe Biden has ever been.
Do you think that the first woman president title carries with it a number of votes that people say, you know what, I'm not sure where she stands on these issues, but she would be the first woman president?
I think women and I think Americans are smarter than that. I think what they want is someone who's going to care about them. They want someone who's focused. They want someone who's going to talk about the status of education right now in this country and that our kids are getting dumber, not smarter. They want someone to talk about home ownership and how hard it is to own a home. They want someone to talk about the fact that prices have gone up 19%. And they can't do anything about it. They want someone to talk about how we're going to prevent war.
Is Donald Trump that someone?
He can be, and I want him to be. But
he's not now.
You don't need to be talking about crowd sizes. You don't need to be going on rants about her not doing an interview. You don't need to talk about, things that don't matter. It's not about her. It's about the American people. Talk to them and let them know you need their vote. Don't assume people are going to bend a knee. That is not that 20%. Their ideas are still out. What they like about Kamala is that she's being hopeful. She's talking about freedom. She's talking about a way forward. They don't want a former president talking about the past. Trump knows how to win. He just needs to do it now. He has the ability to do it.
Governor, there's someone inside the Trump campaign, and maybe the former president himself, who's watching this interview saying, wow, she's really good. Why can't we use her in suburban wherever? If he called and said, could you go here to campaign for me, would you do it?
I mean, he's welcome to call. I have talked to him. He's welcome to do that. They are doing what they think is best, and that is his right to run the campaign he wants to run. He's chosen that. All I'm saying is I want to see them focus, and I want to see them win. We have too much at stake. We have to win this election. And I genuinely hope that he will go out to the 20% of people that are going to decide this election and say, you know what, I need your vote, and I'm going to fight hard to do it, and these are the issues I'm going to fight on.
Governor Haley, Ambassador Haley, thank you very much for the time.
It's always fun.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.